Okay, I talked about a bench pin in the other video when I talked about basic tools that a beginning student is going to need. Every jeweler has a bench pin of some sort. And I prefer to buy mine as a solid piece of wood that I can cut and file grooves and make little notches wherever I want them based on the different techniques that I'm using. This one is fairly new. My old one, which I love, is very worn and it's still good, but I'm using this new one, that I got with the Benchmate system. I cut here so that I can provide the metal with support all the way around it and saw efficiently. One of the things that helps save your blades is to lubricate it, and I do have a couple of types of different jeweler's lubricants. This is a Stay Sharp lubricant, and I use this for drill bits and other types of burrs, cutting burrs that I use. But for my saw blades, I use a beeswax, and I have a little chunk of it stuck to my bench. I have it's in a wooden dowel, and I drilled a hole in the side of the bench so that I can just go over and swipe my blade, load it with some beeswax, and saw without having to stop and pick up the beeswax. I'm right-handed, so when I'm sawing, I want to, this is a mark, this is with Sharpie. Sharpie will burn off of your metal. It can also be wiped off. One of the best little things I love, and I can't do without in the studio, is ultra-fine steel wool. This is 4/0 steel wool that I just get at the hardware store. This is a great eraser on any metal. This is a piece of aluminum that I'm using, and it's about 20 gauge. I personally prefer to saw at pretty much everything with a 4/0 blade. It's very fine. For me, it means I'm spending less time filing the edges smooth. The coarser the file, the more aggressive the file, the more time you're going to spend refining the edges and smoothing them up with a file. But when you're starting out, you really want, until you get to the point where you're proficient in your sawing and you're not breaking blades all the time, I do recommend using the recommended size saw blade for the gauge of sheet that you're working on. And I believe I said this was aluminum. When I'm sawing, particularly when I have a size, here's an example of some earrings that I'm going to be doing later today, and I am going to cut these out. If I cut right on the line or inside, it's sometimes even I will get a little wobbly in my lines as I'm sawing. Most of the time I can saw a good straight line. But, you know, every once in a while, depending on the time of day, how tired I am or whatnot, I can get a little off. So if I try to stay just to the outside of the Sharpie mark, then I can file it in just to the black Sharpie mark and have it be exactly the size that I want. So staying to the right of the line is helpful. And when you're sawing, you want to keep yourself lined up with your work. You don't want to you want to make sure you have both feet on the floor, your back is straight, your shoulders are down and relaxed. You're just got your head tilted just slightly, and you're ready to saw. Sometimes it's helpful to tilt your saw blade forward a little bit just to get it started, and then straight up and down. One of the things that you want to look for is, I started it right on the line. Okay. You want to listen for a nice steady sound. You don't want to have a lot of stops and starts, but when you're first starting out, stops and starts may be the sounds that you're having and so on. That generally means that you're pushing too hard. One of the things that you want to make sure you do is all you're doing is guiding your blade up and down, and you're letting kind of your body gravity or whatever. Every time you make a downstroke, you've just pushed through a little bit more metal, and when you come up on the upstroke, you're going to be forward the next little bit and you go down again. Don't push it or you will break your blades. Now I'm going to just kind of, if this was an outside, you know, I was cutting something out, like the earrings that I just showed you, I'd have a few little wobbles instead of having it be straight. And you can kind of see, hopefully, look on the back, and you can see little bits of wobbles here and there that I would want to file straight. But eventually you want to get as straight a line as you can. The closer and the better you become, more proficient you become in your sawing, the less time you're going to be spending trying to true up the shape that is your goal. When you are doing curves, I'm going to start with just a soft curve here. You can turn your metal gently and you can turn your blade a little bit. When it's just gentle like this, I tend to turn the metal and keep my blade straight. And you can see how I'm turning the metal. You can hear those little stops and starts. The thing that you don't want to do and there hopefully you can see that. You don't want to make turns while your blade is stationary in the metal. If you turn this while it's stopped, you are going to twist the blade. You can see how very thin the blade is, and it doesn't take much torque at all to snap that. The thickness of your metal is going to do it, no problem. So when you're turning, you want to make sure that you are definitely in motion. And I'm really going to show that to you on this and then the next 3 practices. I'm going to load some more wax. Now this one's a little bit sharper, so I'm going to kind of keep going forward, but I'm also going to be turning my blade a little bit, and you can see I'm turning, but I am not making any turns without being definitely in motion. And you can see how my saw frame is turning with it. Now I'm just going to continue on and remove this. So hopefully you can still see the Sharpie mark there. But if this was an outside shape and I needed this to fit, I would want us to file this down here and here until it's just touching the line. But so we're getting more aggressive as we go along. Now I'm going to show you on the next piece of aluminum, I've got a coil that keeps going around, and then I'm going to show you how to do corners. So load my blade. And if I was left-handed, I'd be starting on the left side of the, whichever you prefer, but mostly if I'm left-handed, I'd be holding it like this and starting on the left side. I could probably go a little bit faster if I was using a heavier blade for this demonstration, but I just was lazy and didn't feel like changing blades. One of the things that you want to do is make sure that, I'll just show you this, if you're going to stop midway through a thing, you want to pull your metal from wherever you're at and pull it all the way down to the bottom of your piece so that you don't have the weight of the metal hanging on here and possibly break your blade. But you can rest it at the bottom of your blade, and then you can actually set your saw frame down on your bench pin and leave it there safely if you have to step away for just a second. Slow and steady really wins the race. And one of those things is that you've got teeth on your saw frame from here to here. This is about 3.5, 4 inches from here. This part is smooth. So you want to have long, steady strokes. Not like this. That is going to be overworking yourself, and you're going to be working much harder than you need to be. So you want to use the full length of those teeth and make good, long, steady strokes. And you can hear the difference, and you can see the difference in how fast you're going. You're not going to be going very fast. And there we go. Ta-da! We have a nice little spiral cut out. I'm going to take this, I'm not going to back this out of here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen my the thumb screw at the bottom. And I'm going to just pull this out of here and retighten, reload the blade. But now I've got a nice spiral here, and it would have taken forever had I been just going. Okay, I'm going to cut this little, we'll call it a castle. How about that? When you're doing hard corners, you're going to want to stop when you get there. I'll show you real quick. Now I need to turn. You can't just turn the piece because you're going to break your blade. So what you want to do is make your up and down motions, make all the strokes of your blade stay in place, and turn the metal until you're at your 90 degrees or whatever the angle of your turn is. So go forward, stay stationary, and keep going up while you turn your blade, turn your saw frame and your metal at the same time. And it goes for either direction that you're going in. Whoops. Trying to hold it so that you can see it. Whoa, that was almost going to break the blade. Ta-da! Now you've got very crisp corners here and here as well. I hope that the demonstration and all the narrative of what I was doing worked for you so that you understood it clearly. And if you don't, ask me some questions in the comments and I'll be happy to answer those for you. The assignment that I want to give you is to find a sheet of metal, and you can usually pick up small packs of non-ferrous metals at your local hardware store. And the thing that I recommend, and I always have all my beginning students do that have never sawed before, is to take, I just give them aluminum or copper in class, and draw some straight lines, draw several of them, then draw some slight curves, few of those, some tighter curves, some spirals, and give yourself some hard 90-degree angles. You can do even more. You can do really tall peaks that are just quick turnarounds. But practice these. Get a jeweler's saw and some jeweler's blades, not things, you can't use coping saw, things that you can get at the hardware store, unfortunately. So when you do get a jeweler's saw, you want to make sure that you order some jeweler's blades. And generally speaking, I usually suggest that students get a number 2 blade to start with. And again, if you want to take some photos of what you do, of your sawing practice, take some photos of it and send it to me in a message on Instagram at Pamela K. Bellesen, Bellesen. And I'd love to see what you're doing, okay? Try to make this as interactive as we can, all right? Thank you so much, and I'll see you the next time. This is inside the Rio Grande catalog, and this is one of my most primary resources that I use here in the United States. These are a good example of different types of bench pins that you can purchase. This is also a really good example of how you can get some that are removable with screws and height adjusted depending on the space that you have. I have this type that screws directly into my bench, as well as a more high-end professional one for stone setting. Here's another one that shows an example of one that the metal part comes through there and clamps to a bench. And these are all totally acceptable. Sorry for the glare. Every one of these works very well and is fully adequate.